Hello, I am Gamer Vince, and this is my introduction and tutorial to making a Pathfinder character. I'm going to be using two websites to do this, so mainly just so I can show you on my computer as I do this. I know you're tired of looking at my ugly mug from the previous, if you watched the previous videos. And I know this is going to be much more interesting. So I'm using two websites. I'm using the D20 PFSRD, which is D20, 20-sided die, Pathfinder system rule database. And this has pretty much all the rules you need to play Pathfinder on it, which is fantastic. Great resource. And the other one is Mythweavers, which is where I'm going to be recording my character information on. You don't need to use, you can substitute the D20 PFSRD for pretty much any of the books. If you have the books, if you have like the player's handbook or any of the player's handbooks, you can get all the information that's on here from your books instead. In fact, you can get even more information. I don't think absolutely everything is in this system database, but you know, it gets the job done, and I can show you while I'm doing it. And Mythweavers can be substituted for literally a sheet of paper if you wanted to. You just need to be able to record your stats on it. You can print out a character sheet from the Pathfinder website. You can use a myriad of other tools. I just got kind of used to using the Mythweavers website, so I'm going to be using that. And yeah, that's what I'm going to be using to record my character on. Alright, so without further ado, we're going to get started making a character here. And the first thing you want to do is come up with a character concept and decide what you want to play. I know that a lot of guides and role-playing books kind of recommend you start with a race, like I'm going to be a dwarf. I usually recommend you start with a class instead and then pick a race sort of based on what class you want to play, because the class you want to play is going to determine much more how you're going to be playing the game. A fighter is going to be very different to a wizard. So, I would pick a class first. That said, I know that there's like a ton of information right here. It's everything from game mastering, a bestiary, environment, all this kind of stuff. Ignore all of this for now. All we're going to look at sort of is right over here. We've got some ability score stuff, and we've got, our classes. And the first thing you want to do is pick one of these classes. If this is your absolute first time playing Pathfinder, I would stick to the core classes because they're sort of the simplest and the most easily to identify. Like, I know what a barbarian is. I kind of have an idea what that does. I may not necessarily know exactly how a cleric works, but I kind of have an idea. Once you start going further down in this list, like base classes like an alchemist or gunslinger or magus, like what is all that? A gunslinger shoots guns, but this is a medieval fantasy setting. What's that doing here? So they get a little bit more complicated and less intuitive as you go around. And the hybrid classes, I think, are actually kind of complicated at times. So I would stay away from those if this is your first time playing. So first thing you do is just pick one of these core classes, and that's what we're going to be doing. Also, another piece of advice that I usually give to new players is that being a spellcaster, while a lot of fun and giving you a lot of options, can be a little complicated. I feel like the druid is the most complicated class because it can just do so much. Then I would say wizard is the second most complicated class, followed by like cleric, then maybe sorcerer, and then it sort of starts wavering. Like a bard can be kind of complicated. And it's just going to sort of, it's going to depend a lot what you want to do with the character. But essentially what I'm saying here is that if this is really your first time playing and you're not entirely sure what you're doing, then I would recommend, maybe playing a fighter or a barbarian or something like that. Maybe a rogue, ranger. Like, there's lots of good choices, but maybe not a druid or a wizard, because those can be a little bit complicated, especially with preparing spells. Actually, cleric can be kind of complicated as well at times. So just keep that in mind. I think today what I'm going to be making for you is I'm going to make a very simple fighter character. That's what I'm going to be doing, because this is not about the specifics. I'm going to have a specific tutorial on building and optimizing a fighter, but this is just going to be, quick and dirty about how to build a character. So you've picked a class. Now what? All right, I've decided I'm going to be a fighter, so I'm opening that window up here for the fighter, and I apologize if there's a little bit of lag here. But all right, and it's going to give you, you know, like a nice little bit of intro. It's going to have some nice flavor text. You know, it's going to tell you here what your character is supposed to be doing. Your fighters excel at combat. You probably kind of figured that. And so what you're going to be doing here, once you're on this page, is that you're going to need to look at a couple of things. One thing you, for instance, want to look out for is to see if there's an alignment restriction. If it says alignment any, don't worry about it. Just forget I even mentioned it. And most of them do say that. But then there are some classes that can only be certain alignments. And if you see something here, this is the first thing you want to look at. If this disagrees with what you want to do, don't play the class. Or ask your dungeon master for, you know, an exception to be made for you. Like, for instance, paladins have to be lawful good. They are sort of like, you know, very orderly policemen of the realm. So they have to be lawful good. And if you are like, man, I wanted to play an evil character, well, you can't play a paladin. Unless, you know, your DM gives you an exception. So that's the first thing you want to look at. But most of them are going to be any. So at that point, don't even worry about it. Alignment, by the way, in case you couldn't gather from what I was talking about, it's just the moral compass of your character, and it's going to determine sort of what kind of moral choices your character makes. And that's all that's really there for. It's not really a big part of the game, so you can ignore it if you'd like. But here's where the real information starts. Like, this is all flavor text right here. You don't actually need to read this, but this is where we start getting into the nitty-gritty of it. And the first thing it's going to tell you is going to tell you your hit die, which determines your hit points, how much health your character has before falling unconscious. And a fighter has has a D10, so that's good. It's also going to tell you your starting wealth. It's going to tell you both if you want to roll for it. Like, it tells you can roll 5 6-sided dice and multiply that by 10 gold, or you can just take 175. Again, this is something you want to ask your DM about. You might get more or less than that. You may, you know, if you're starting as a slave in a gladiatorial arena, you're probably going to have no money. So, you know, it depends on. Always ask your dungeon master. Communicating with your dungeon master is crucial. If you're ever not sure about something, like whether you should take, you know, the gold, should roll for it, or if you should take the average, ask your dungeon master. That's what it's going to come down to. And if you are the dungeon master, just make a decision about it. You know, you could be like, all right, everybody take the average, or everybody gets 500 gold to start with, or nobody starts with anything. You're all naked in the woods. You know, whatever you want to decide. All right. Then a couple of other things that you want to look at. So it's going to tell you here what your class skills are, and these are skills that are, well, class skills for you. I know that doesn't help you. These are skills that you're particularly good at. You can put points into your other skills, but these are the skills you're going to get a bonus to for having them be class skills. So this is stuff you're going to be good at. So later when we're picking skills, keep this in mind. It's also going to tell you your skill ranks per level. Every level you're going to get, you know, 2+ intelligence modifier for level. And here I'm actually going to quickly point out in 3.5 Dungeons and Dragons, the first level you get, you're going to get 4 times what you get at any other level, which is a little bit confusing. I like that in Pathfinder they just simplified it, like every level you're going to get 2+ intelligence modifier, which if your intelligence modifier is like 2, you're going to get 4 skills every single level. Level 1, 4 skills. Level 2, 4 skills, and so on. Like I said, in 3.5 D&D, for your first level and your first level only, you're going to get 4 times that. So instead of getting 4 your first level, you would get 16. 4 times 4. And then at second level, you would just get 4. So that's one, you know, that's a difference in 3.5. And then after you're done reading all this, then the next thing you want to look at is this table right here, and you're going to see this, like, all this information should be identical if you're doing this out of the book. But this table here is going to tell you what you are going to get at every level. Like at first level, as a fighter, you're going to get a base attack bonus of 1, a fort save of +2, no reflex or will save, and you're going to get a bonus feat. And what I also really like about the PFSRD website is that, like, let's say, bonus feat, what's that? Click on it. It takes you down to bonus feat where it actually explains it. Yep. All right, so, and every level you're going to get a little bit. If you're making a character at a higher level, essentially what you have to do is make a first level character and level it up a bunch. So if you're making a 5th level character, make a first level character, then level it up to 2nd level, then 3rd, 4th, and then 5th. There's no real shortcut for that, unless you know the game and it's just like, all right, yeah, fair enough. So at first level you have a base attack bonus of 1, and you have a fort save of 2, and this is 0, and this is 0. And then at 2nd level, your base attack bonus is 2. That replaces the base attack bonus you get from here. This does not add up to 3. No, at 2nd level, you have 2 base attack bonus. As a fighter, your base attack bonus is always going to be equal to your fighter level, if you're only taking levels of fighter. Yeah, so this isn't going to add up. And the same with the fort, reflex, and will. However, all these specials do add up. Like at first level, you get a bonus feat, and at 2nd level, you get another bonus feat. So you're going to have 2 bonus feats from your fighter levels at 2nd level. And you're going to get bravery +1, and then that's eventually become bravery +2. Yeah. If you're ever really if you don't know what these abilities do, they're always described after the table. Like what's bravery? Well, it says starting at 2nd level, a fighter gains a +1 bonus will save versus fear. Oh, well, that's handy. So it always explains it. It always explains, and that's what all this stuff is it just explains what your character does after that. Okay, so that's how to read this table. And there's a couple other things that you still need to know. So like I said, all these abilities you're just going to have to read. And then there's weapon and armor proficiency, which is sort of the last thing every character has. And it's going to tell you what kind of weapons and armor you are proficient in. If you're not proficient in an armor or a weapon, you essentially don't want to use it because you're going to take big penalties. So try to stick to armor and weapons you're proficient in. Being a fighter, you're proficient in pretty much everything. Like it says, simple and martial weapons, which means all simple and martial weapons, with all armor, so heavy, light, and medium. It's kind of a weird order for that go to. I feel like it should go light, medium, heavy, or at least heavy, medium, light. But no, heavy, light, medium, and all shields, including tower shields. Tower shields are quite often excluded in armor proficiency, so watch out for that. But for fighters, they're included. You're good at everything. Got all the weapon and armor proficiencies. The only thing you're actually not proficient in is exotic weapons. So if you see something listed as an exotic weapon, you're not proficient in it. But as a fighter, you're going to be proficient in everything else. All right, so that's good. So yeah, so now you know how to read this sheet, like what all these things are. And the next thing you want to do is you want to pick a race. So we're going to go back to this first page here. This is the first page, the D20 PFSRD page. And there's a couple of races listed here. I don't particularly like picking races like this. I quite like picking races. If you click on the races tab, you're going to get to a page that is just going to list all the races. And your selection of races is going to depend on what books you have access to. So there are core races like dwarves, elves, gnomes, half-elves, and all this stuff. But, there is a huge number of races. And on the website, if you're using the website, you can pick a race from, this list here. This is pretty much all there are core races, featured races, uncommon races, and then at the end there's a couple of other Paizo races that I do not recommend playing other Paizo races because it's weird stuff like an android or a monkey goblin, which, like they're perfectly playable. It's just that they might be a little bit, weird for the system. Also, I also recommend if this is your absolute first time playing Pathfinder, stick to the core races. If you want some variety, there's really no harm in picking a featured or uncommon race. They're just, they're a little bit different, and you may not exactly know what they are. Like, what's an Aasimar? If you want more detail on one, just click on it. You know, like you click on the ASMR, open that up in a new page, and it's going to tell you. It'll be like, oh, they're humans that have outsider blood. That's angels. They basically have angel blood in them. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. And they look a little bit like that. So, you know, and it'll tell you all kinds of things about it. A lot of this stuff is pure flavor text. Okay. So the next thing we're doing is picking a race. And I'm going to pick human because humans are really simple to do. And the way to read this table is that it's going to give you an ability score plus, and there's going to be an ability score minus. Size is almost always going to be medium. Sometimes it'll be small. And you're going to take certain penalties and benefits for being small. So keep that in mind. It's going to give you a type and a subtype. You can pretty much ignore this for your first game. This is kind of irrelevant. Speed is kind of important. You will notice that a lot of characters, pretty much all small characters, are slower than their larger counterparts. Short legs. Short legs make you smaller. I mean, yeah, short legs make you slower, not smaller. Though it also actually kind of make you smaller. All right, in any case. Smaller characters are slower. Medium characters are faster. And that's like one big difference between medium and small characters. 30 feet, by the way, if you're translating this into squares for your board, when 1 inch by 1 inch squares, 30 feet means 6 squares. 20 feet means 4 squares. It's always, each square is 5 feet. So, you know, that's a handy bit of information. It's going to give you starting languages, which is not terribly important. The only thing you want to watch out for is if you're starting to like venture away from sort of the core classes, is make sure you can speak common, because that's what pretty much everybody can speak. That is like the internet English of the day. Everybody can speak common. It's just so that, you know, if you don't speak common, you're not going to be able to communicate very easily with the rest of your party. And that's going to be a problem. So just watch out for that. Everything else is just a bonus. If you speak Dwarven, you're going to be able to speak with other people that speak Dwarven. Senses, it's just going to determine how far you can see. And there's really just three types. There's nothing. Like humans, our eyes kind of suck. But then there's low light vision, where where people with low light vision can see twice as far in dim light as humans. And then there's dark vision, where you can basically see in pitch black darkness up to a certain range. Like your dwarves can see in the dark, because they're so used to living underground, up to 60 feet. Yeah, so yeah, that's nice. And then there's going to be a bunch of other traits, which you're just going to have to read. Like, all this stuff here is just, you know, stuff that your characters are going to... I would not base my character decision too much on the extra traits unless you have something very specific in mind. What I would mainly base my race choice on is the ability score plus and the ability score minus. So, you're building a character, right? And you're building a fighter, and if you're going to read down here, and if you're going to read, I hope it tells us up here somewhere. But essentially, if you're playing a fighter, you need lots of strength and you need lots of constitution. That is sort of, you need strength to hit things hard, and you need constitution to be able to survive attacks. That's not always true. If you're building like a fighter that uses a bow, you want a high dexterity instead of necessarily a high strength. But in general, if you're playing like a fighter with a sword and a shield, or a two-handed fighter, you know, high strength. And I think I'll be going over in more detail, you know, what you can do in my later videos, like from talking specifically about fighters. But in general, you want to focus on a couple of attributes. Like, if I want a high strength and a high constitution, I'm going to try and look here to see if I can find somebody that gets a high constitution or a high strength, or, you know, even better, both. If it says any, that means you get a +2 to, well, any attribute you want. And watch out for the ability score minuses. Like, I don't want to be an elf fighter because they get a penalty to con. And humans are always a safe choice. If you don't want to spend too much time just looking at these characters and being like, oh my gosh, what am I going to play? What am I going to play? And you just want to pick something and go, humans are always a good choice. Humans are always a good choice. They get an extra feat, no strings attached. Fantastic. All right, so now we've decided to be a human fighter. Okay, so all of that's basically what it's given us. The things you want to look down here is, like, notice that there is like all kinds of this flavor text here, and you're going to find that in the books as well. There's all this flavor text, and you can pretty much ignore that. You can kind of do what you want. If you really want to get into your character, read some of the stuff. It's actually quite good. All you really want to look at is under the standard racial traits. Alright, so it says human characters gain +2 racial bonus and 1 ability score. Great. They're medium-sized. They have 30-foot land speed. Good, good, good. They speak common. And if they have a high intelligence, they get some more stuff. And they get an extra feat, which is great. And they get an additional skill point every level. Great. And that's what you get. Alternate racial traits are if you want to start trading out some of these abilities, like dual talent allows you to trade in your race, the +2 to 1 ability score, the bonus feat, and the skill trait, but you get an additional +2 to something. So that can be nice. That said, though, if this is your first game again, just stick to the standard racial traits. Keep it simple. There's ways to customize your character at pretty much every single level in Pathfinder, so just stick with the standard racial traits. Okay, so we've got our standard racial traits. We're a human fighter. Good, good, good. Now it's time to actually start building our character, and that is going to be we're going to be coming up some ability scores, basics and ability scores. I'm going to open that. I notice that I'm opening these all up in new tabs. That's because I might be hearkening back to something. Let me make sure that my recording's getting all that. Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, it's good. So ability scores. We're going to click on that. All right, and there's 2 ways to generate ability scores. That is, you can generate it either through a system called point buy, or you can roll for it. And that is explained in the book, which, that's good. You can just look at the book and see an explanation for it. And there's different ways to roll for it. Like you can do roll 3d6 and just add the dice together. Or you can roll 2d6 and add a 6 to the sum. Or you can roll 4d6 and discard the lowest die roll. I mean, there's a million ways to do it if you want to roll for your stats. And that's going to give you sort of a random array. And you're going to put those into whatever you want. So it's like whatever I roll highest is going to my strength. Whatever I roll second highest is going to go in my, constitution. But if ask your DM which system you're using. The DM is going to tell you which system you're doing. And if you are the DM, again, you can just pick whatever you like. If you want your characters to be kind of random, your players to have kind of random stats, have them roll for them. But if you want them to be very balanced and sort of, make their own decisions about what their character is good at, point buy system is the way to go. If you are in a, it says here, how many points you should get for point buy, and that's basically how overpowered are your player characters, how many points are they going to get. I'm used to playing a high fantasy setting, which is 20 points, and I think that's pretty nice, and I think a lot of DMs kind of pick that. That's sort of, if you play Pathfinder Society, which is the Pathfinder organized play, the Paizo organized play for Pathfinder, I think they use 20 points, and that's pretty standard. Even though it says standard fantasy here 15, in my experience, high fantasy is more standard. So just pick how many points they get to spend, and the way that the points are distributed is, 10 costs 0 points. You can lower that attribute to get more points. It says minus points, but you're actually gaining those points. So if you have 20 points, but your charisma is 7, you have 24 points left to spend. And if you're raising something to an 18, that costs 17 points. So that's how the point buy system works. I think it's pretty intuitive, and they do have a Pathfinder RPG ability score calculator down here. So there I've got a couple of things for that. So now we actually have stuff to write into our sheet. So let's do new sheet on the Mistweavers thing. I'm going to call this Vince. I'm making myself if I was a fighter in D&D. And we're going to do Pathfinder new, and we're going to do create character sheet. Yep. And it's going to create this character for us. See, now I've got this character. You just click on the name, and it'll open it for you, a nice little sheet like that. And there's a bunch of information here. Don't be intimidated by this character sheet. There's a lot of info on it, but yeah, it's a lot of it you're not going to be using. All right, so first, name, Vince, player, me, class, fighter. And I think that actually this sheet is quite smart. And and it actually can do with something with the information of fighter. But in any case, like this is mostly for your own, like so you remember. Like you're probably not going to forget that you're playing a human fighter, but you know it's nice to have it up there. You don't need to write in the space, by the way. You really don't need to. Like deity, alignment, all that stuff, you can kind of make up. Though it depends on your DM. Always ask your DM. Now we've actually got stuff to write in here, though. So let's say that we're a fighter. We're going to have strength 15, and we're going to have a dex of 12, and we're going to have a constitution of 14. And just however you come up with these numbers, like if you roll for them or point by or what have you, just put them in here, and it's going to do a lot of the work for you. And actually, one of the reasons why I think it might not be a good idea to use one of these sheets if you are playing D&D or Pathfinder for the first time is that it does a lot of the work for you and you may not understand why that's happening. Like notice I put a bunch of attributes in here and now I have an AC and I have an initiative or init. You may not even know what that means. Like what is init and why do I have one? What is all this stuff? It is basically taking these modifiers. In Pathfinder and in Dungeons and Dragons, to be perfectly honest, these scores here, pretty irrelevant. You're never going to use those. It's the modifiers you care about. Like the 16 doesn't matter, but the +3 is nice. Dexterity of 12 is, who cares? The +1 is good. And a lot of, it's this +1 right here that you're going to be seeing over and over again. Like for instance, here for your AC, which is armor class. Notice that it says Dex here. That's because you get to add plus your Dex bonus to your AC. So it's added that to my AC. It's done that automatically for me. So that's nice. I'm going to be showing you how to calculate all these numbers step by step, so don't worry about it. But if you're using the Mythweaver's app, and I think probably a lot of digital character sheets, it's going to do all that for you. Alright, so hey, we've got attributes. Sweet. What next? So now that you have attributes, your base attributes, your race is going to influence those attributes. Like if you're a dwarf, you're going to be particularly hardy, which is going to be, I think, a bonus to Constitution. And we're a human. Humans can be whatever they want to be. Humans are versatile. You know, you get to add a +2 to anything you want. And that is a +2 to the score, not to the modifier. You never really, you know, do anything straight to the modifier. You're always going to be influencing the scores, even though the modifier is all you care about. So let's say that, you know, I get my +2 for being a human. I'm going to add that to my strength score, so this is going to bump up to 18. So don't forget to do that. You calculate your ability scores first and then add your racial modifier. Always do it in that order. Alright, so that's good. So I've added my strength bonus here. I got the +2 for being a human, and yeah, so that's pretty good. Now, another thing I want you to be aware of. So, like I mentioned, we actually don't need this page anymore, and we're probably not going to need the human page either, or the races page. We're just gonna cut all that out, and all we're gonna worry about is two things. We're gonna worry about what we get for being a fighter, because that's the main thing. And we're going to worry about what we get just for the level we are at. Because you not only get this stuff for being a fighter, you also get, see, like there's a nice little character creation outline here that you can go through, and I do recommend, you know, going through it. And it does all this, determining hit points and all that stuff. It's good stuff. Money, personality. Oops, I somehow went into the wrong page. But it's worth looking at anyway, because it's a character creation outline. And it even tells you to get some dice. You know, I think I said in the last video, you gotta have dice. Gotta have dice. Dice are fun. But one of these, and I think it's going to be a little bit more obvious in character advancements. I think that's what I was looking for. Yeah, character advancements is what I was looking for. You are going to get stuff just for leveling up, regardless of what class you pick. And I'm sorry if I didn't make this obvious, but you notice how we said, like at the beginning, well, I'm going to be a fighter. Every level after that, you can choose to take levels of something else. I do not recommend that because the game is balanced around you sticking with one class in Pathfinder. In 3.5, it's a little bit different. The balance is a little bit different. But in Pathfinder, at least, I would recommend that you just take a class and stick with it. So it's like at first level I get this, at second level I get this, and so on. But it is possible, like you can take one level of fighter, and then your next level could be in wizard. And then instead of being a second level fighter, you are a first level fighter with first level wizard, and you get all that stuff and add it up together. So I don't recommend you do that for your first game, and for your first game, just stick with one class. But you, in addition to the stuff you get for your class, you also get in your book or on the website here, it should also tell you that you get stuff based on just your level. Like every single first level character is going to get a feat. And every single fourth level character is going to increase one of their ability scores by 1. Wait, or is it? Yeah, one of their abilities scores by 1? Pretty sure it's 1. It explains at the bottom of the page. You're going to increase your ability scores by 1. Every third level character is going to get a feat here. And by the way, if you are a first level wizard, first level fighter, you are overall a second level character. So, you know, be aware of that. So this is extra stuff you get. So if you're making just a level 1 character, you are going to get an extra feat. You're going to get a feat, regardless of who you are. And we are a human. Human gets an extra feat, and we are a fighter, so they're going to get an extra feat too. So we have 3 feat. 3 feats to pick from. So, you know, be aware of this character advancement thing. It usually doesn't make a big difference. Like, notice that there's experience points. Let the DM worry about that, and if you are the DM, you know, worry about that. And this is wealth, how much money you should have, but that's the DM's decision. Experience and wealth is up to the DM. Don't worry about that. So first level character is going to get an extra feat. So we're going to be picking that in a little bit as well. All right, so now you know everything that you need to look at. So now it's just a matter of transferring these numbers onto the character sheet. So our base attack bonus is +1, our fort saves is +2, reflex is +0, and our will is +0. So we're going to transfer those numbers onto our character sheet, as well as that we're a first level character. So it's asking us here, I should say somewhere, I'm kind of a little bit new to this sheet myself, but, oh, and hit points. I'll do that in a moment as well. All right, so first thing first, base attack bonus. Our base attack bonus is 1, so we're going to write that in there. Yeah, and that's going to populate it like this is base attack bonus. And by the way, when it says MAB, CMB, and RAB, this is melee attack bonus, ranged attack bonus, and combat maneuver bonus. And these are basically what it's done here for you is shown you what your chance to hit somebody is. But we're not going to deal with that just yet. We're first going to just enter some numbers. So we're going to put base attack bonus here. We're going to put our +2 to fort here, and this is going to be 0 and 0, because that's what our character sheet told us. And now it's done a bunch of calculations for us. So now I'm going to take you through what these numbers actually mean. So melee attack bonus. If you're attacking with a melee weapon, you have to overcome your opponent's AC, that is armor class, to see if you hit them. You have to equal it or exceed it. So notice that this says +5, and this is just a regular 11. The reason why it's +5 is that it's a 20-sided die +5. So if you're doing the math here, you know, on a 20-sided die to beat an 11, you just need to roll a 6 or better. So that's pretty easy. But don't worry, our armor class is going to go up as well. And our ranged attack bonus is the same thing, except that's overcoming our armor class with a ranged weapon like a bow. So that's really simple. Combat maneuver defense is using maneuvers, like if you're trying to trip an opponent. And the thing you're trying to overcome with that, instead of AC, is combat maneuver defense, which is the CMD right here, which is 16 for us. Isn't that nice? Yeah, so notice that there's like lots of numbers all over the place here, but don't worry, they all make sense, I promise. So let's add a couple of other things onto our sheet here, like our movement. Movement speed is 30 feet. The fact that we're human told us this, which is great. We can't fly, we don't have a swim speed, and we don't have a burrow speed. Like, we're not like a subterranean animal, and we can't fly either. So that's all fine. We're going to leave that blank. Other things you want to add, so to determine your AC, what you want to do is you want to add your armor bonus, your dexterity bonus, and then any other bonuses you have. Like notice how it says dodge, size, natural, and deflect. Those are all just different types of bonuses you can have. So don't worry about those. Don't worry if this is all blank. It's going to be blank for you. For in general, these are mostly going to be blank. But we are a fighter, so we're probably going to be wearing armor, so a number is going to go in here relatively soon. Okay, so that's good. Initiative determines combat order. The first thing that happens in combat is everybody rolls a 20-sided die again, and you add your initiative bonus to it. And whoever has the highest gets to go first. If there's a tie, the tiebreaker is whoever has the higher initiative bonus, and after that you just determine randomly. So that's nice. So that's what that number is. You get to add your dex modifier to that. If it ever says dex, dex gets added to a lot of things. That's where it goes. Fortitude, reflex, and will. So sometimes you will get hit with awful things like poison, or you'll be trying to dodge a fireball, or you're going to try to resist mind control. And that's what these things are for. They're sort of the armor class of other things. Everything that's not armor class is resisted with fort, reflex, and will. And again, it's a bonus. It's a plus. So you're going to be rolling a 20-sided die and adding that to that. It's going to be like, all right, a wizard has cast a fireball at you. Make a reflex save, which means that, you know, the fireball is going to be like, all right, it's a die check, DC 17. So you need to roll a 17 or better, and with a +1, that means you need to roll a 16 or better. Odds are not great. But then, like, your fortitude's +4 for a fighter, so you might be better at shrugging off poison. Essentially, these things, don't worry about them unless the DM prompts you. By the way, the way that these numbers are, you come up with them is that that there's an ability score that is associated with, and your base. The base is what you get from your class. The ability score comes from over here. For Fortitude, it's Constitution. So that's where that +2 here comes from. You get to add your Constitution modifier to your Fortitude defense. For Reflex, it's Dexterity. I probably shouldn't have used ones multiple places. But yeah, Dexterity is Reflex, which that makes sense. That's pretty intuitive. And Will defense is Wisdom. So my Wisdom defense is +1. So my will defense gets that +1. So that's where that comes from. And then there's several different modifiers, like if you're wearing a magic amulet or something, it can boost this stuff. So don't worry about these being blank. Blank is fine. It's just base and ability score that you're going to have. Okay, good. We're actually almost done. I know it doesn't look like it, but we're actually really close to done. The next thing you want to do is probably pick feats. And that's going to be on the website, on the PFSRD website. The thing I usually... Actually, I'm going to just overwrite this page here. What I recommend you do is... So there's a tab for feats. You go into feats, and there's this thing called a feats tree, which is amazingly useful. I think it's great. I highly recommend you use it. If you are doing this from a book... In the back of the book, there should be a feat table kind of similar to this. Kind of similar because it's not going to break it down in a tree. It's just going to have them listed there. And there's not going to be nearly as many feats, so it's probably not as necessary. But the way that feats work is that you just pick them and they give you a bonus, and that's pretty much it. All you have to do is meet the prerequisites. Like, for instance, this one requires that you have the mystery class feature, which means oracles. So if you're not an oracle, you can't pick that. Like a hex class feature is something witches do. So if you're not a witch, you can't take this. So you got to meet the prerequisite. And if you meet the prerequisite, you can just pick it and it gives you a bonus. That simple. So feats are not that complicated. You just have to pick them. There's just a lot of them. There's a very large variety. So what I recommend you do is, well, if you're playing a fighter, watch my fighter video, and I'll give you some suggestions for these. But in general, you're just going to be going over here, and don't forget, every first level character gets a feat, so you're at least going to be picking one of these. And the reason why I like the feat tree is that, so it says here combat expertise. It requires that you have an intelligence of 13. Cool. And then all of the stuff underneath it here is stuff that requires combat expertise as a prerequisite. So you can't take Butterfly's Sting without getting combat expertise first. All right, makes sense. Not too complicated. there's just lots and lots and lots of them. And by the way, over here it tells you, I think, what books it's in? Is that what it's telling you there? No, it just tells you what the type of feat is. There are different types of feat. There's G for general, C for combat feat, and I'm assuming crit for critical feats. And that is one thing you do have to be aware of, that, like, notice that our fighter gave us a bonus feat, but go here and check it out, because, for instance, a fighter has to pick a combat feat as their bonus feat. So it can't be a general feat, it has to be a combat feat. So keep that in mind, that you may be restricted in your feat choices. But your class will tell you that. So a lot of this is just reading. Once you've picked your feats, they're going to do various things. They might give you bonuses to stuff and whatever, but just write it down. Always write down your feats so you can remember what you have. So notice how here it says feats, class features, abilities. All the abilities that you're sort of accumulating, just write them down here so you remember them. Alright, so the next thing you want to do after that is equipment. So there's a whole page dedicated to equipment. And skills. Skills we do still need to do. But equipment, that is going to depend very largely on your DM. They might just say, like, alright, well, you've been adventurer for a while. You know, if you're a fighter, go buy yourself you have some starting golds to buy a weapon and some armor with. You know, so that's great. You're just going to have to go into the equipment section, which is here. And I recommend, like, if for your first level character, I recommend maybe buying some armor, and you definitely want a weapon. And if you're like a wizard, maybe buy a scroll or something. That's just going to be really class dependent what you're getting. But whatever you're buying, write it down. And the things that are noteworthy are the weapons and armor. Like, for instance, if I'm wearing plate mail, I'm going to write in plate mail here. Plate mail. It's going to be type. The type, there's several different types of armor. Like, there's light, medium, and heavy. And all that really matters for is those for two things. One, if you're not proficient in it, you're not going to be very good in it, and you're going to take penalties. And two, if you're wearing heavy armor, it's going to slow you down. But I think I'm going to get into more detail on that, specifically to the classes. Because a wizard, for instance, is not going to be running around in armor. You're just going to ignore this bit. But that's what this thing is for here. And the AC is what's really important. Like, if it's plate mail, I think it's +8. So if you write down 8 in here, you will notice that up there, it didn't add it. That's kind of disappointing. I thought it was going to add that. Maybe I need to write plus? +8? No, it doesn't add it. But it should add it here under armor. So my armor is 8. If that's where that armor comes in. And the armor, the check penalty, that's what that stands for. The check pen. It's same for armor check penalty. That is a penalty you take for skills for wearing that armor, and it only applies to abilities that have this ACP. Like, if I do check penalty, let's say -1. Please do it for me, sheet. No, it doesn't. This sheet's just not as good as their original sheet. I'm kind of disappointed in this sheet, to be perfectly honest. Oh, wait. Wait. I wasn't wearing my armor. So now... Okay, it didn't do it there, but maybe it did it. No, it still didn't do it. Oh, wait. No, it still didn't do it down here. I'm really disappointed in the sheet a little bit. But, you know, this gives me a chance to explain it. So armor check penalty is just, it gives you a minus to some skills. Where ACP, and you should be able to figure out which skills. Like, is it going to impact your ability to acrobatically jump around? Yes it is. If your armor check penalty is -2, write -2 in there. Is it going to impact your ability to appraise things? No, it is not. Is it going to impact your ability to bluff? No, it is not. Is it going to impact your ability to climb? Yes it is. So pretty much anything that is strength or dex based, you're going to take an armor check penalty for. So, you know, keep that in mind. And weapon, the way that weapons work is that, you know, like, let's say that you decided to get a bastard sword. Bastard swords, because I am a bastard. Your total attack bonus is basically just going to be your melee attack bonus. If it's a melee weapon, it's going to be your melee attack bonus. You might get some bonuses to it for, like, say, weapon focus or, you know, all kinds of things. You could get a bonus to this. But, you know, your basic one is just going to be your base attack bonus plus your strength modifier. While for your range, like if it's a bow, let's say it's a bow, then it's going to be 2. Crit range, this is all going to tell you for the crit range and the damage, it's going to tell you is going to be weapon specific. So I think a Bastard Sword is 1d10, and the crit range I think is a 19 through 20. So this might be a good idea to explain this notation. So the way that damage works for weapons is that, first of all, it depends on how many hands you have on the weapon. If it's a two-handed weapon or a single-handed weapon. If it is a single-handed weapon, like a Bastard Sword, that means you're wielding it in one hand. Your character only has 2 hands. You could have like a shield in a Bastard Sword, or you could be dual-wielding Bastard Swords to be extra bastard. But the damage is, so the +5 here is going to be to overcome their armor class and see if you hit. If you do hit, you deal a 1d10 of damage. So you deal a d10 of damage, you roll a 10-sided die, and you deal that much damage. In addition to that d10, you're going to do strength damage. If it's a one-handed weapon, you're going to add, so that would be a d10 plus 4. That's what you would write in there, because my strength modifier is 4, and I get to add my strength to damage. Makes sense? Makes sense. If it's a two-handed weapon, it's a little bit more complicated. Because you're wielding it with 2 hands, you can put more weight behind it. So instead of just adding your strength modifier, you add strength and a half. So that would be 6. I would get to add 4 basically for one hand, and then half, the 2, for using my other hand on the weapon. Crit range, what that means is that if you roll a 19 or a 20, you threaten to crit with the weapon. And what this times 2 means is that you would deal double damage. So the way that crits work is that, so I'm rolling the 20-sided die, I rolled a 19, great, now I threaten to crit. I would roll my die, I roll the 20-sided die again, and if that would hit, and it doesn't need to be another 19 or 20, it just needs to hit, then I crit. So what that means is, like I rolled a 19, I now threaten to crit, and my opponent has 15 AC. Don't forget I have +5. And now I roll again, and I roll a 10. So my 15 would hit his AC of 15, so I crit and I deal double damage. If you fail that second roll, then it's just a normal hit. That all makes sense. And I hope it does. And then you deal double damage. That's what that times 2 is. So you would, deal 1d10 plus 6 of damage, and then you double it. So that's all good. Yeah, so that's all that works. HP, I should quickly mention, is, so you may have noticed that the fighter had 1d10 hit die. Well, what does that mean? That means you have a 10-sided die for hit dice, and there's 2 common ways that I've seen that done. Is that, one, you can roll for it. So you literally roll a 10-sided die and add it to your hit points every level. So, oh, I rolled an 8. Great, I have 8 hit points. Oh, crud, I rolled a 3. I have 3 hit points. No matter what happens, you always get to add your Constitution modifier to your hit points every level. And that's the main purpose of Constitution. So if I rolled a 3 on my 10-sided die, I still get to add the 2 for a total of 5 hit points at first level, which is not great. And so because dice is very random for hit points, for something as important as hit points, what I've seen a lot of DMs do, and if you're an inspiring DM, I highly recommend you do it this way, is you take the average of the die rounded up. So for a D10, that would be 6 hit points. And the reason why it's 6 is that, if you're not a statistician, a D10 on average rolls a 5.5. If you add up 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way ... to +10, you're going to come up with, some number. And if you divide that by 10, which is the 10 possible sides on the die, you are going to get 5.5. And all the dice work this way. So like for an 8-sided die, the average is 4.5. And you just round that up to give your characters an extra hit points. So for a 10-sided die, I would get 6 hit points plus my Constitution bonus of 2 for a total of 8. So I have 8 hit points. And that would be my max hit points. And if I ever run out of those hit points, I would be unconscious. And if I get to... And this is another difference between Pathfinder and 3.5. If I get to negative 10 hit points in 3.5, then you're dead. If you get to your Constitution score in Pathfinder, then you're dead. So you've got a little bit to go. But if you're at 0 hit points, you're just unconscious. At 0 HP, you're unconscious. Okay, good. I know that was a lot, and that there's a lot of numbers here, but once you kind of have them on your character sheet, you kind of have it. Oh, and a nifty thing here is that you can do what your size is in here. Most creatures are going to be medium, and that's going to add something to, like, if you're a medium creature, that literally does nothing to your character sheet because it just adds a bunch of zeros everywhere, which so that does nothing. But if you're, say, small, look that your base attack bonus is going to go up, but your combat maneuver bonus is going to go down. Your AC is also going to go up, but you're also going to deal less damage and all kinds of things. If you don't want to worry about that, just play a medium creature, and that's just a bunch of zeros across the board. And that's not really gonna impact your character sheet at all. Okay, I promise we're almost done. There's like one last thing you got to do, which is skills. So the way that skills work is that every level you're going to get ranks to put in your skills. And this is one of the major differences between Pathfinder and 3.5 D&D is how these skill works, and a couple of differences in what skills there are. In Pathfinder, the way it works is that you are limited to the ranks of a skill to your level. So you can only have one rank at level 1 in anything. So if I want to put a rank into acrobatics, I can only put in 1 at level 1. At level 2, I can make it a 2. Not a 32, a 2. To start slowly creeping up that way. In addition to that, so those ranks you get are decided by your class. Your class tells you how many ranks you're going to get. Like this says skills ranks per level, 2 plus intelligence modifier. So if my intelligence modifier is 1, I would get 3 per level. And in addition to that, I'm a human, so I would get 4 per level, because they get a bonus to that. So, let's say that I have 4, so I could put 1 here, put 1 there, put 1 there, put 1 there. So that's 4. That's my 4 skills. So that's nice. In addition to that, if it is a class skill, you're going to get a bonus to it. If you put a rank into any of these skills in Pathfinder, you're going to get an additional 3 free points just for having it be a class skill if you put a rank into it. That's how that works. So for instance, like let's say acrobatics is a class skill. Notice that just suddenly jumped up. See, like it was 0, now it's 3. It's because I get those 3 free bonus points. That's what the check mark is for. Is a class skill. And actually, I know that their previous sheet was pretty good. Notice how I wrote in here fighter. If I do fill skills, this should hopefully fill the skills for me. No, it doesn't. I'm very disappointed in this character sheet. I like their other character sheet more. But in any case, just put check marks next to all the ones that you're trained in. Like for a fighter, that'd be like climb and intimidate, I think, and maybe probably a couple of other things too. So, and I would recommend putting a couple of ranks into the ones that you're good at. In 3.5, it was quite a bit more complicated. The way it worked in 3.5 is that skills that were not class skills, you needed to spend 2 points to get 1 rank into. So like let's say that acrobatics is not one of my class skills. I'm a fighter, I'm not very acrobatic, so acrobatics is not one of my class skills, but I want a rank in acrobatics. In 3.5, you would have to spend 2 points to get 1 rank. It's literally half. So that's how that works, and there's none of this bonus stuff. It's just a matter of what it costs. It's called a cross-class skill. And that's how it works in 3.5. So, be aware of that. And then beyond that, that's about it. What skills you pick is going to depend on your class and what you want to do. So, yeah, I think that basically, I know this is a long video, but I hope I've given you a chance to make a character from scratch, not having played Pathfinder ever before. So after this is all said and done, you should have hit points, you should have an AC, you should have an attack, you should have, a bunch of, all this stuff should be filled out, and you should have feats and class features written down here, and you should have skills and equipment. And that's all you really need. Some classes are going to get some bonus stuff. Like, notice that down here, there's a bunch of stuff that, additional stuff like languages. Like, you're going to speak Common more likely than not, but if you're really smart, you can add a couple of languages in here. You can, like, this is a lot of flavor stuff. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. It does not make a bit of difference, except in your GM's campaign world, you know? Maybe you're living with a tribe of Amazon women and they don't like men, so, you know, that it purely roleplay. This entire page here is purely roleplay. It's like, hey, here's a description of my character. This is what my character is like. This is what my character's flaws are, and all kinds of things about it. And you know, you've got like a nice little space for private notes. One thing that you may need is, oh, tell me they don't have a character sheet. They don't have this on this character sheet. All right, so one thing you're going to need if you're playing a spellcaster is room to write down your spells. And I quite often recommend having just like a separate document with your spells in it so that you can write down what they do. And if you were playing a spellcaster, you of course have to pick spells. But aside from that, I think that pretty much covers how to build a character. And I hope this has been informative and helpful. And yeah, in my future videos, I'm going to go over in more detail how to optimize your character. I'm going to tell you, if you're playing a fighter, you want these feats. If you're playing a wizard, you want these spells. Like, I'm going to be doing videos like that. So if you want to really optimize your character, then watch those videos and you're going to be like, you know, being a fireball slinging wizard that just destroys everything or what have you. So yeah, that's what those videos are going to be for. But I hope I've helped you explain just the basics of making a character. And don't forget that even though character optimization is really, really nice, you know, like I like doing character optimization and doing all those kinds of things, character optimization by no means is necessary. It depends more on your group and on your DM. If your DM is trying to challenge you and it's going to be really tough combat encounters that your character is going to need to be optimized to survive, then I guess you got to have an optimized character. But if your DM is more about role playing, then you can build a perfectly good character that is suboptimal. And you didn't see me do air quotes there, but yeah, you can basically, like, yeah, technically a fighter should have really high strength and a charisma doesn't matter, but I don't want to be a personality lacking brick, so I'm going to have, like, you know, 12 charisma or what have you. And, you know, perfectly good to do that. So I think with what I've just shown you, you can do that. Okay, so thanks everybody for watching, and I hope this has been helpful, and I hope to see you next time in some of my other videos.